Hey, this is Kay, and this is Speak Up, Don't Shut Up, HD Sucks. And I'm here with Taylor, who has Huntington's disease.
Hi.
And I'm here with Philip.
Hey, welcome everybody.
And we're going to start on the second part of Softer Sides, a symptom of Huntington's disease. And we ended up with the question on the last one. Philip, can you remind us what that was?
Well, how do you know when your loved one is accountable for their behavior and actions and when they're not?
Yes.
And also, many of us were very religious before. And so, shouldn't our conscience or moral compass have prevented us from, doing the questionable things that we've done? So
Yes.
these are all questions that, everybody has. And so, as I mentioned last time, to ascertain whether or not your loved one's behavior and actions are HD related or not, I like to use the measuring stick called uncharacteristic. Okay, if your loved one has never forgotten where they put the car keys, and all of a sudden they cannot remember to save their lives where they left the car keys, then maybe that's HD affected forgetfulness. See what I mean? Now, if they've always forgotten where they put the car keys, and now you've been tested and you have a CAG repeat, and you are still forgetting where to put the car keys, you can't really tell. You see what I mean? Because it may be HD affected behavior,
That first stage of Huntington,
and it may not.
it depends what stage of the Huntington's that you're in, and like if you're cognitively aware of any of the pressing issues. Like I know I can get very forgetful and forget a lot of things that I used to never forget, and so and then sometimes when you do things that are out of character for you, like I've went into a full-blown HD moment where usually I wouldn't have been OCD or stuck on something. It's like 5 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like 5 years ago, I'm a completely different person than I am right now. Every day is a different day and a different day of declining as well. So I'll never be that same person on the next day. I'm always a little bit more down that scale, just a little more. And really, It's scary because I look back and I'm like, wow, look at all the changes I've went through and didn't even know going through these changes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
There's times where you're not cognitively aware at that moment. You can look back and be like, wow, that was a real big HD moment. So you can look back in hindsight, but sometimes once you're in the second stage or progressed more, you're not going to realize it.
Exactly. And I want to remind everybody, when I was doing support groups every month for the HDSA Arizona affiliate, I had the privilege of having Dr. Jane Paulson coming down, and one of the caregivers asked her a similar question. She just says, how do I know when my spouse's behavior was HD affected or if they were just trying to be an SOB?
Right.
And I will never forget her answer. She said, I would err on the side of compassion, and then it really doesn't matter, does it?
No.
So caregivers, in order to allow your loved one to continue making as much beautiful music as you can, I would also ask you to err on the side of compassion. If your loved one says something or does something that's uncharacteristic, that's totally out of character or whatever, please don't say, oh, they're just trying to be a pain in the butt. Come on, get with it. No, please err on the side of compassion. And then that's for the caregivers. And then for those who have Huntington's, I would encourage you not to take advantage of this. Okay? Because sometimes we do know.
Yes.
And
You have to
sometimes
be
we
accountable.
do know and we can change.
You
Yeah.
have to
And so, don't take advantage of your loved one either. So I'm asking both of you to please, err on the side of compassion and be nice.
Yes.
So I want to talk about, we started a whole bunch of the softer symptoms before on part 1 of this tape. And today I want to talk about dementia. And of course, with Huntington's disease, it's subcortical frontal dementia,
Yes.
unlike Alzheimer's. With Alzheimer's, theirs is cortical dementia. So if a person for Alzheimer's goes in to apply for disability, the person will ask them their name, the person will ask them where they are, and they are clueless, okay? That's the cortical dementia. However, we have subcortical frontal dementia, which gets us in trouble still because we do know where I am, who I am, who the president of the United States is right now, but you can't ask me to subtract 7 from 100 because I can't do it. I've been, I've lost my inhibitions. I've, got caught stealing at work, and all kinds of other things, are happening. But to present, when I go in to apply for benefits and all of that, they look at me and say, wow, what is this guy doing here? Surely he can't use benefits. And I think, Kay, maybe you or Taylor, put a little graphic on our listserv, that said, here's a person in a wheelchair that's disabled, and here's a person that looks totally okay because it's a mental disability. It's not a physical disability.
Yes.
And we would never tell.
I've been discriminated against for my HD because even my own father wants to deny that, I have these symptoms and that my symptoms are from HD. Almost all of my symptoms that I have mentally and behavioral, it all stems back to my HD. And I do look like
Exactly.
I work at times, but when I have, deep chronic depression and bipolar like symptoms where I'm either really high or I'm really low on my scale, and there's no middle ground unless I'm like very medicated. Right now I'm taking 9 different medications. There's not one cure all med for HD, and
You can't
multitask anymore. But I've been discriminated and like been told like I look so normal, but like I tell people and I tell my dad, my father, not one day is the same for me ever. I never have a repeat of the same day. It's different every day that I wake up. And that's hard to wake up sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly. With reference to all of the medication that you're on, all of us are on a lot of medications too. And so I've kind of coined a phrase, better living through modern chemistry. Better living through modern chemistry, okay? Because thank goodness, there is some things that will help the depression, that'll help the bipolar-like symptoms when we have them.
This is the first time
and
in
that'll help
probably 15 years that I haven't had depression right now. So depression in about 6 months, and that's a good stretch for me. Like I've never had this long of a stretch with no depression.
Yeah.
I'm still going to therapy.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, and dementia is a gradual impairment of the mental processes involved in comprehension, reasoning, judgment, and memory. Early symptoms include forgetfulness, disorganization, and affective disorders. Mental, emotional, and behavioral decline usually becomes severe enough to interfere with the person who has Huntington's ability to carry out everyday activities or the ADLs, the activities of daily living. Dementia is a progressive deterioration in the cognitive function, the ability to process thoughts, or what we call intelligence. Progressive means that the symptoms will gradually get worse.
Yes.
The deterioration is more than might be expected from normal aging and is due to the cell death caused by Huntington's disease.
It's by the protein that overmakes in the chemistry in your brain. It's the protein breaking down the matter in your brain. And I do have cognitive issues since I have been diagnosed. It has, like, the last 5 years, again, I've went through those changes, and I continue going through those changes. But I was in nursing school, and I was a medical assistant for a long time, and I would multitask at work. And it got to the point where my boss at work would complain and say that I wasn't going as fast as he wanted me to go, and I wasn't catching on to things that I should be catching on normally, and that, you know, he wasn't understanding the changes I was going through. And actually, he's the one that pushed me to go get diagnosed, because I would cry at work and wonder what was going on. I'd be so frustrated, and you know, not being able to read something and not memorize it. Like, I have to read something 3 or 4 times sometimes to even get it to stick, and even then I might forget it the next day and not have any, not be able to remember some of it. But now there's other things that I remember a lot now. Like, you know, I still have function on, but it's a work in progress. I definitely have, like, ADHD symptoms.
Mm-hmm. And we never know when we're going to have problems with, like you mentioned, you know, the ability to self-monitor, you know, to know that, gee, I'm not performing my job ability as fast as I used to do. You know, yeah, all of those things just come and go intermittently to begin with, but they are extremely hard for others who don't understand. And now I want to talk a little bit about depression. You know, the suicide rate with those with Huntington's disease is about 9 times the national average. And this is really, really, really sad. This is really, really sad.
It is, and I've dealt with suicide since I dealt with depression, chronic depression, since I was 12 years old. The suicide, I've had suicidal thoughts daily, probably daily.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even now.
Yeah, no.
I have daily thoughts that I have to subside, and, like, I go down a list, and I push those feelings off. But I also talk about those feelings. So I talk to my therapist. I talk to my best friend. I tell my dad what's going on. But at the same time, I try to deal with some of those a little bit of alone, because I don't want to alarm somebody. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it just depends on the severity. But like I said, with my depression the last 6 months, I really haven't had too many suicidal thoughts, but it is very high. I mean, and my dad used to ask me, why can't you just shake those off? It's all in your head. And, like, literally, I can't shake that off. It's not something I wipe off or just change my shirt. It's always going to be there.
Yeah. I wish we could do that. And Taylor, one of the things that helped me in the past and others is that I asked a psychiatrist a long time ago, you know, how will I know that I'm on the right level of antidepressants? And so he said, you know, on a scale of 0 to 10, you know, before you started Huntington's and, you know, the depression that you have now, you know, what was your mood level? And I said, probably, you know, around a 7 or an 8. And so he said that, okay, so when you get back to the level of, you know, enough antidepressants, you should feel the same as if before you started. You see what I mean? Right. So if you had a real positive outlook, you know, on life, like a 7 or 8 or whatever, and then you've got this awful depression, and then, you know, you're trying to increase the antidepressant to see, you know, to get you out of the dumps and out of the suicidal thoughts and everything. just remember that when you're at the right level, you're going to have, that same cheery attitude as what you had before. So on
Yes.
antidepressants, you should be like a 7 or 8 if that's where you were before. So
Yes.
just kind of remember that, and that'll help everybody, make sure that they,
Yes.
you're taking enough.
I
And
do.
now remember,
I take 3 different
Huntington's is a
antidepressants.
double whammy. Pardon?
I take 3 different antidepressants. And what you talked about, that I got my glow back finally. And I don't think I ever remember a time, like I said, I've had chronic depression since I was 12. And I don't ever have life without depression. So for me not having this depression, it's amazing. And my outlook
Yes.
is optimistic, but I've had to change my perspective on a lot of things, because before this I was having my perspective was not that good. I was very I don't want to say, like, I was just like, poor me. I have to go through this. And it's not like that anymore. So my perspective, and I'm staying medicated. That's the key. And it is amazing.
Yeah.
Now I'm at a 0 depression and my glow is back. So I feel good.
Fantastic. Yeah, I can tell. You're there and you're putting yourself forward, and you look really, really well. Part of the problem with depression and suicidal rate being about 9 times the national average is we have a double whammy. We have the depression that's caused by the cell death in the caudate nucleus, and that causes the chemical imbalance. Then we have another type of depression that we deal with, and it's called situational depression. How much longer am I going to be able to talk? How much longer am I going to be able to have sex? How much longer am I going to be able to drive? You see what I mean? So, and I can guarantee you that, quite a bit of people in the whole United States are already taking antidepressants because of just primarily the situational. Okay. But so we have to be really careful that, to realize that if we have friends and that, to watch them, because it's not only that chemical imbalance caused by the cell death, it's also the situational. And everyone else is having problems with just one of those. And so, we can see why it really adversely affects, all of us. And so please be careful. The depression is just so, and, once you get on the antidepressants, the suicidal rate will go down. You won't have the ideations and all of that. And it's just a godsend.
Yes, and then struggling too with those HD outbursts. I'm on a mood stabilizer, and then my depression as well, and environmental. Like, I was in a very stressful environmental. I was in a very stressful marriage for the last 12 years. In the last 2 years, I've been like detoxing off of that. So I was in a very toxic place, and so taking my medicine every day and then detoxing off those old behaviors too. Like, I've been trying to change my behavior on how I react to things. So like like a pause before I react, or a filter. I really have to have a filter before I talk, because my H&D just wants to fly out my mouth and I want to say whatever I want to say at that moment, and I have to know that I can't do that always, because people don't
exactly.
Sometimes when I'm just my normal self and I'm not, sometimes people don't know how to take me, and they're like, wow, and so I really have to step back and look. And I take Lexapro, Wellbutrin, and Abilify, and Vraylar. So that's the 4 main antipsychotics that I take.
Yeah, those are good ones, and you're right. I mean, it does give you, before taking them, we have like no or very little emotional gating, but after you take it, I think some of that gating is still not there, but I found that I had a longer fuse, and I think that's kind of what you're saying, is that, you know, you have a little bit longer fuse before you blow up, as before you would just immediately blow up. So, you know, so that way I could, you know, leave the situation or, you know, do something else, which I didn't have that luxury before, because I mean, I was just flying off the bat.
Yes, and
But the medications did give me that longer fuse.
yes, it did for me too. And sad that it took me until 28 to learn that, you know, learn the coping skills. You know, I wasn't taught coping skills as a kid. And so to use coping skills now with my medication has really did wonders for me, because I was acting out, but I was acting out on a lot of hurt from my childhood and then my marriage. And so now that I've worked through that, you know, mental health is a huge thing for HD people. So also working on like any struggles that you had, you know, a big part too, because I was just acting out on every single thing that came my way. And now I look back and I'm like,
Right.
I wouldn't dare act out like that now. So it is, I mean, sometimes I still have my moments where I'm like freaking out about this dirty bird in the grocery store that everybody's touching, and I'm freaking out about it and nobody else is freaking out. But, you know, little things now, right now.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, yeah, don't worry about that, because you know that those type of things are under control with us, or you know, better controlled.
Like today, I had a moment in the car. I had a moment in the car today, and I told Kate, if we don't go to this store right now, I don't feel like going into this store. I want to go to this other store. And like, it really was an HD moment though, because I hadn't had no like mood swings the whole day or anything, and like it switched on. I was just like, no, I'm not going in there.
You had to go to the other store first before we went to the other store.
Right, just because I don't know.
Oh, I see.
He was kicking in.
So like,
Yeah, and Taylor, a lot of the things that you're talking about, you know, if you have gone to like any Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or whatever,
I am in AA right now. I'm currently in an AA.
These are those are what they call triggers. And you know, you mentioned that, you know, any little thing was setting you off, and those are the triggers that you've got to learn to identify, and then you know, start working on them and figuring out, you know, why am I getting so upset when that
and AA is amazing. I have like literally been, like you said earlier, I was cut off. I'm a religious person, and I was cut off from my connection to God. And I was very stressed out and concerned and like kind of mad at God for a moment. And I didn't understand why I had been given these cards to like look at. And I was very just turned off. Like I'd never been turned off like that before. And I kept trying to pray and I kept trying to reach out to God, but AA really pushed me towards going back to religion and being able to have my higher power and have God and know that he has my back and that he wouldn't wish anything that he couldn't give me any struggle that I wasn't able to handle. And then also tell my story to others for being in an addiction, for having HD, you know, being a single mother. You know what I'm saying? Like, God has given me many labels to be able to help other people. And it took me a moment to realize that. And so I suggest AA for HD people too as well. And, you know, because it is a strong network. It has a great support group. And I hope we find that in the HD community the same way as how close AA people are. I hope our community finds the same way to be close like that. And it's really amazing. My sponsor, and he's awesome.
Don't forget, we have meetings too once a week in the group. We have a meeting for everybody that wants to join.
Oh,
we can mention that as a good support group thing we can do. When everyone talks about HD, just join us. It's Wednesdays and Sundays.
Okay. All right, great. Taylor, one of the things that I did, I had the opportunity of actually doing some addiction anonymous classes and all of that. And, to get back to where it's more, dependent on God in that, instead of when everybody introduces themselves, instead of having them say, like, hey, I'm Taylor, an addict, I have everybody say, no, I'm Taylor, daughter of God.
Oh, yes.
Or I'm Phil, son of God.
I love
And so
that.
that completely changes, the whole, how you're thinking of yourself, and, that, wow, I can get through this because I'm a son and daughter of God. And so that's really helped me and a lot of other people, just kind of stay focused with God and
I love that. I think that's amazing. And AA really has made me look at myself and love myself unconditionally. Before, whenever I first got diagnosed 3 years ago, I was lost. I was broken. I was broken from my childhood, from my marriage, and I was just broken. And then that whole of my mom being gone and her sisters being sick and my whole family being affected by this disease, I was broken, and AA really pushed me to come back to being, a daughter of God. And like you said, so that's amazing. I love that. And I hope I can get to
next
too. So that would be awesome. I would love to be in your AA group.
And next meeting you go to, you'll have to surprise them, and as everybody says, hi, I'm Carol, addict. Hi, I'm Frida, addict. And you're just going to say, I'm Taylor, daughter of God. That'll blow their mind.
That's right. That's awesome. I love it.
But it's so true. I mean, it's so true. And I think it helps everybody keep in mind that they are, we're kind of like, we're spiritual beings having an earthly experience instead of just the opposite. So depression, symptoms, sadness, tearfulness, lethargy, apathy, withdrawal, loss of interest in activities once enjoyed, insomnia, sleeping too much, weight gain or loss, commonly seen even in the early stages of Huntington's. And yeah, the more we can help people, the better off.
Now,
the better
it took me a
off we
while
are.
to really hone in that I was having apathy issues. I was in denial about that for a while, but I was usually always in tune with like how everybody was feeling around me too, and I wasn't seeing that disentation of not having any motivation. I was losing it. I was depressed, and I was not wanting to go to my kids' soccer games or not wanting to take them to practice, and I was sleeping all the time. I was sleeping for like 18 hours every day. And now, with me, it's either I sleep way too much or I don't sleep at all. There's no middle ground really. So like I have to either be taking my meds at night to make me sleep, or I have to be not taking any meds because I'm sleeping way too much. And there's a balance there. So I'm not always taking my sleep meds, and sometimes I am. It's just, every day with HD is a different day on the gauge, really.
Yeah. No, you're so true. I'd like to talk a little bit about emotional blunting. The most common symptoms are loss of energy and initiative, which you mentioned, poor perseverance, which has to do kind of, with apathy too, where we just get more tired. We're taking naps all the time. Our quality of work, impaired judgment, poor self-care, and then emotional blunting. And emotional blunting, Kay put out an article where it talks about, we cannot recognize if someone is disgusted with us. If Kay gets really, really, really upset with you, and You can see it in her face, and everybody else can see that Kay's really, really upset. You probably will not clue in that, she's about to holler at me. So, we need to really realize that, that we just have a hard time. And I think that's part, that goes along with the blunting, where we just, someone can come in and tell us a really horrible story, or that someone died, and we just don't have any, we still have
It's
a
very
flat
hard. It's
aspect.
very hard for me to
Please.
give comfort to somebody for real. It's like I'm very numb at times. I mean, like you said, it could be somebody coming in and saying that somebody has had a death or somebody has had a tragic accident, and it's hard for me to respond and feel empathetic or empathy, or like try to express sympathy that I have for that person, because it's hard for me to just express that. And I don't know why. And I've always been like that, even since I was a little girl. It's been very
Mhm.
for me. So I don't like, it's hard for me to give out that comfort like I really would. I try to. Kayla knows that I give comfort, but other than that, like, hard for me to give somebody, especially if I don't know them too well, that comfort either, because I don't express it very well. Like, it's weird. My emotions are either way too much or lack of. It's bipolar.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. One person who did research on this, it said, it says, without the caudate, the brain cannot regulate how much movement, how much feeling, or how much thinking is required in different situations. They cry one moment and laugh the next. Their emotions don't just match what's around them. They're superficial. They're shallow. You can't relate to them deeply. And so, we just miss that emotional, connection.
The emotional
And
depth.
we actually
Emotional depth.
became,
It's
go
very,
ahead.
the emotional depth, there is none. It's very shallow, like you said, and it is hard to connect, and it is hard to express those. And like you said, they're everywhere. So it's all or nothing. All or nothing.
Mm-hmm. And part of it is that we become narcissistic. In other words, we become very conceited. We become very me-oriented. Where what's in it for me type thing. I don't really care about you guys. I'm more concerned about myself and my pleasure and, my success and all of that, because we just become, almost childlike like that. But we just become so, narcissistic. And change in affect is a common early symptom. Affect means the outward expression of your thoughts, feelings, and moods. For example, a person who is normally cheerful may show little feeling at all.
And
Sympathy and empathy.
And then sometimes on my face too, something will just snap, and something will snap, and I'll just be into that next mood. And it's weird because all of a sudden it'll come over my face. And Kayla can tell from across the room that that switch have switched over, and I'm into that. Either I'm in a good mood, or usually it's a omen of a bad mood coming when I have that blank expression, and it's just like, there it is, and we're into that mood. And sometimes I can't get off that mood. Sometimes I'm stuck in that mood, and it's like this OCD, and it's just like I'm stuck on it. And until I just come off of it, I'm stuck on this merry-go-round with this mood sometimes, and I have to either distract myself. So we've gotten to the coping skill of distraction and trying to get me off that mood and into that mood. But sometimes I'm just stuck there.
You got to help her get off the merry-go-round.
Yeah,
look at something else.
Redirection. Yeah, because you have perseveration, repeating things and thinking the same things over and over again. And so distraction or redirection. Both work. Now, us with Huntington's disease may sometimes feel self-centered, uncaring, thoughtless, appear totally disregarded for the emotional needs of our partner, which can be very hurtful and especially poignant when it contrasts, from the feelings and emotions that you had for each other before.
Yes. My husband would ask me, why don't you ask me how my day is? Why don't you ask me how my day is going? And I wouldn't ask. It wouldn't even cross my mind to ask him how his day was going. And hurtful for him that I didn't care. Like, I didn't care about his feelings like I used to, because me and him had been together since, I was 16 years old. And so for him to see this decline, he couldn't accept that. He couldn't accept that this was my HD and not me having these shallow issues or having any emotional. I show all my emotion on my face too, most of the time too. And so like he could not grasp that most of this was HD and not just my shortcomings, And till this day, he doesn't accept it. My dad doesn't accept it either. So it's really hard when my family is trying to be uneducated. That's how I feel. Very uneducated. Even though I try to educate them, they're not receptive to it. So I have to accept that and move on, So that's very
hard. Exactly.
Just like I forget to ask Kayla how she's feeling most of the time. Like I forget. So there's a point where like I know I can't parent my kids as well that I would like to, because I'm not seeing how they're feeling really. There's this filter where I'm not really seeing how they're feeling or how it. So I can't really raise my kids full time right now either, like I would want to, like I had planned to,
Mm-hmm.
That's very hard.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people have mentioned that, they feel like they've gone from, lover in a relationship to mother, or, lover in a relationship to father, because, you just, those feelings, those emotions, those ties, that were there before were just zoom, they're just above us, and we don't, we just don't see a need for them, or we don't do them anymore.
Yeah, so things change. A lot of changing goes on, and you don't realize how quick things sometimes change and how much it affects your partner. So it's hard to be so worried about yourself as well, and then also having to be worried about your husband and your kids and how it's affecting them. So that's hard too, and that's where a lot of that depression plays in, because you do feel like shortcomings, and the bar is raised here, and you're used to meeting that bar, but your bar is lower than you think. So it's hard because you have expectations of your life and how you expect it to go, and then sometimes it don't always go how you thought.
Yes, no, you're absolutely correct. Another symptom is impaired executive functioning. And this is a really big one. The realm of executive functions include the abilities to plan, organize, monitor behavior, show mental flexibility, and switch from one way of responding to another. Now, the frontal lobe and the cerebral cortex, these control our emotion, our judgment, planning, organization, social inhibitions. And by social inhibitions, I mean, we may like burp or fart in public. We may also, be sitting at a table, at a restaurant, and all of a sudden just say, man, that lady is fat. And,
Yes.
within her earshot. And it's like, oh, whoa, time out. Didn't mean that. So we have to be really careful that those social inhibitions, you know, that we were a little more careful. Abstract thinking, encoding a memory, problem solving, and logical thinking. So these are all part of the executive functioning, which are huge, and which are, you know, reasons why, you know, we can't do any more multitasking and stuff like
So
that.
like I get very overwhelmed when I have too many tasks or too many things set forward. So like Kayla, I've allowed Kayla to start going over like my bills for me and making sure that I'm like saving back my money for different bills and not overspending. I try not to you know, I try not to allow have too much of a quick response to something, because, you know, I will make a not good decision off the back of that. Like I will have not good response and I will choose poorly time and time again and then regret it.
Uh-huh. Now, another one of the biggies is loss of forward or consequential thinking. This really trips up a lot of people because, you know, for example, if you were arrested wrongfully for being intoxicated, and, you know, you might really, you know, lose that emotional gating. But the other thing is that in addition to that, then we probably lose the ability to think ahead and say, if I slug this policewoman, I'm going to end up in jail tonight.
Yes.
So we lose that consequential thinking,
Yes.
and it's kind of
in
like
jail
we
this
lose
last
our
time-
conscience.
When I was in jail
What was that?
when I was in jail this last, when was it, March? Just in March, I went to jail. And and when I went, the judge kept saying things, and so I kept spitting things out. And the guard was like, if you do not stop saying things, you're going to be put in the hole. And I could not concept that. And I was like, no, that's not right. And I got ended up put in the hole. And I told this guard was like, are you stupid? Are you retarded or something? And I was like, man, actually, I'm not retarded and I'm not stupid, but I am disabled. And you are not going to sit here and discriminate against me because I do have a brain disease and I am disabled. So maybe I'm not comprehending what you're saying. And she became very nice to me and breaking things down to me in a way that I could understand that, you know, what I did had repercussions, you know. So this guard really didn't have to listen to anything I said, you know, and she did. She listened and she broke it down, and that was very nice to her. So like,
wow, that was great.
Any other guard, they would have just ignored me, because the county jail here in Louisville, Kentucky is horrible.
Is it? Yeah, but yeah, so we have, you know, the other one that usually goes along with the loss of forward thinking is the loss of inhibitions. And of course, the loss of inhibitions, you know, it involves, you know, maybe all of a sudden, since you've started being symptomatic, you cuss all the time. Maybe you're drinking all the time. You're doing drugs now. You know, all of these things. You're having affairs.
I was doing drugs. I was drinking all the time. I was trying to numb myself. And I ended up going to rehab twice this year. I have. And so right now I'm at like 52 days sober, completely sober off.
Wow, fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
it was
fantastic.
a lot of hard work and a lot to me to admit to myself that I had an issue and a problem. So that I'm not having to do that to get any type of relief. I'm like, for the first time in my life, I'm not crutching off of any other substance other than what's prescribed to me. So
yes, fantastic. Well, Kay, it's probably getting close for us to wrap things up. It was been
yes,
Taylor, it has been so cool to have you on here with us too. And if anybody, after listening to this, has any questions, you know, please ask any of us.